So, why did we begin the Human Fund deck? Well, the dream of the Human Fund deck began a few years back when we wanted to make a mono white humans deck on a budget. So, that's what we've done here. And it likes to play cheap cards here, and one of the strange ones is Beloved Princess. And we will explain that as we go through the deck tech. But other creatures like Thalia's Lieutenant, it's all about humans putting counters on humans. That is what the Human Fund deck is all about. So oftentimes our humans, like Talia's Lieutenant here, enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on each other human you control. What a value that is. So think about that. For 1 and a white, we can place those counters on other humans we control. So that might as well just be 1 white. And then whenever another human enters the battlefield under our control, put a 1/1 counter on Thalia's Lieutenant. So this card just pays for itself. Dual duty. Of course, we're running play sets of these kind of things. We got Kythian, Hero of Akros. It's a 2/1 for 1, so that's great. For 3, it can gain Indestructible until end of turn. But at end of combat, if Kythian, Hero of Akros, and at least 2 other creatures attack this combat, exile Kythian, then return it to the battlefield as Gideon the Battle Forged. So that's good to happen. We're running 2 of those, being a legendary. We don't want to get flooded with a bunch of these in our hand. We have Mutavault, very important land in here, even if we're not going to use it. It enters tapped, or it doesn't enter tapped, I'm sorry. If you play the land and then turn it into the creature, even if you have the land and don't have to tap this to get the land, it still has Summoning Sickness if it entered that turn, similar to Inkmoth Nexus. So the Human Fund. This is going to help do it, so a couple of Mutavaults in here. We can transform them. That's going to be humans entering the battlefield and humans putting counters on humans. So, and let's just say here we go play that. And tap that. Play something like Champion of the Parish, right? Well, that's turn 1. But a beautiful thing that we have in this deck. There it is. Force of Virtue. So with Force of Virtue, on turn 1, we can exile a white card from our hand on our opponent's turn 1, not our turn 1. So this has flash. So on our opponent's turn, we exile a white card from our hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Creatures we control get 1/1. So exile that, flash that out, and let's see here. What do we do? I don't have any counters around me right now. That's all right, but these creatures will get a 1/1. When we do the gold fishing with this, we'll go ahead and have the counters. So it's more exciting with the counters, right? So turn 1, we've already got nice Anthem to beef our creatures up here. We have Champion of the Parish as a 2/2. We'll play our land for turn. And say we can go like this and tap those 2 and play a couple cheap creatures. So those have entered the battlefield. 2 more counters on Champion of the Parish. We can send that one in. And turn 3, play something like a Thalia's Lieutenant. Again, humans putting counters on humans. And any other 1-drop we might have on hand. Let's see, I know we have one somewhere. Yeah, so that's the idea. That's what we want to do in a nutshell, right? And seeking out our human fund and our humans putting counters on humans. Like I said, we're not always going to have humans to put the counters on the humans. Sometimes we got to get the human fund started ourselves by initiating it with something like Rally the Ranks. So those kind of counters are good, such as like Sanctifier Envec. As soon as we start pumping these creatures up, the lightning bolts are going to be at our throats. So Sanctifier Envec in this deck has protection from black and from red. Now in other decks, people like to run this for that graveyard hate. I'd say like first and foremost. But in this deck, I think that protection from black and red, that protection from removal, as this is getting bigger and bigger, more and more of a problem. Similarly to Beloved Princess, that's why we run 3 of these and have 1 in the sideboard. So when you're coming up against faster decks than this lifelink, if somebody does a burn spell, so here, let's just say for sake of argument, we've done that. All right, let's say turn 2, we played an Anthem. All right. Turn 3. Let's say we exile something from our hand on our opponent's turn, rather, before our turn 3, and then do our Force of Virtue. So if we have Rally the Ranks, we have a 3/3, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. That's pretty cool, but again, not relevant too much to us. So then, as our turn comes around on turn 3, we can play something like Thalia's Lieutenant, and it'll get another counter. And if we have another Force of Virtue on their turn, you can exile more cards from your hand. Mutavault, if that is a land that we've had. Any of these things are going to be doing these wonderful things. So basically what I'm getting at with this, like if you're playing against a burn and you're running these princesses, that brings me to the sideboard. Because really this deck is quite simple. Like Gather the Townsfolk, okay? Let's say, where's our... All right, there we go. Champion of the Parish, right? So, turn 1, we play Champion of the Parish. And like I said, Beloved Princess will cancel out those burn spells, and I'll show you how in a second. So, turn 1, Champion of the Parish, right? Turn 2, or on opponent's turn rather, pardon my misspeak. So on opponent's turn, we'd exile something, play Force of Virtue. We would get a 1/1 counter here, so we'd have a 2/2. Turn 2, tap these two, play something like Gather the Townsfolk. 2 white humans, bang. We get 2 white tokens, and we have then, because of Force of Virtue, it's a 4/4. So we have a 4/4 turn 2 and 2 tokens. So then, like moving into turn 3, you play something like a Coppercoat Vanguard, right? So boom, gets a counter. Now it's got that. You play like a Beloved Princess even. That's gonna get another counter. Turn 3, right? Like that's a board state. So we got Force of Virtue, 2 counters. That is a board state. Am I right? So that's good. Kytheon's good for at these times when, say, like, let's go back in time here. So let's say turn 3. Okay, we're going to play a Kytheon. And then we attack with these because they were brought out turn 2. All right, this is turn 1. These were brought out turn 2. So we attack with those 3 that will transform Kytheon into Gideon. And up to 1 target creature an opponent controls attacks Gideon Battleforged during its controller's next turn. That's the +2. +1 until your next turn. Target creature gains Indestructible. Untap that creature. And then 0 until end of turn. Gideon Battleforged becomes a 4/4 human soldier creature with Indestructible. Still a planeswalker. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn. So we have a nice damage sponge there. Someone's trying to get a little creature crazy on us. Know what I mean? Now let's talk about that sideboard a little bit. Because like I said, the main deck itself is very self-explanatory. Those creatures are pretty much all in here in play sets of either most 4. And we got Gideon Blackblade. He's just a planeswalker himself for 3. This is the only 3-drop we have in the deck. So he's not so different, but what we like of him, as long as it's your turn, Gideon Blackblade's a 4/4 human soldier with Indestructible. It's still a planeswalker. Prevent all damage, yada yada. We know Gideon. We know what his hijinks are. But in the human fund, up to 1 other target creature you control gains your choice of Vigilance, Lifelink, or Indestructible. So we said Champion of the Parish was a big boy, right? So let's say that's like a 5/5 come turn 2, turn 3. We can attack with this. Turn 3, after we brought out our Gideon, give it the lifelink, and against a burn deck, we've just canceled out half of the lightning bolts in their deck because we've gained 5 life. If even if they block, I mean, we're gonna gain that life, and that will absolutely cancel out the burn. So let's see here. Oh, Grand Abolisher. This kind of pillow forts us a little bit, gives us a place to be comfortable on our turn. So during our turn, opponents can't cast spells or activate those abilities. That right there is just smoking. This card went down in price so much, it had to find its way into the deck, even though we're running just 2. Let's see there. Mutavault plays such a role, just being able to get that to come in and come out. Even though, like, if you bring it out, the first turn it comes out, if it turns into a creature, like Inkmoth and Blinkmoth, the turn you play the land, if you make it a creature, it has Summoning Sickness. That being said, it will still trigger the human fund. So this will help get the human fund going in those counters. Reprieve. Return target spell to its owner's hand, draw a card. So that's some nice card draw for us. And then returning a spell, we're not destroying something, we're not exiling something, we are in a way like countering something to the opponent's hand. Very cool. 2 Path to Exiles, just to get rid of any problem things, and use these sparingly because we don't necessarily like to give our opponents a land card. 2 Gather the Townsfolk, Coppercoats, and I think, yeah, that should round us up. We talked about Sanctifier, Luminarch, the 1 Giant Killer. We ran more before Fury was banned, but Fury's banned, so we don't need it anymore. Alright, and that's that dummy hand. Alright, the Reprieve in there. So let's talk about the sideboard. Alright, so if we're playing against a burn deck, this is the game plan. So let's say we're playing against burn. For one, what will go in? You can take out, it's kind of obvious what you want to take out if you're going to put in Thalia. So we're definitely not going to want to take out creatures with Thalia, right? What we are going to want to take out is non-creature spells, because we don't want to jam ourselves up that bad. So we'll put in 4 of those and 1 more Beloved Princess. And yeah, I think and then as for sideboarding, I would say against burn, I would take out the Paths to Exiles and probably the 2 Reprieves. And I've thought about adding a 3rd Reprieve because the card draw is so good to have. I love the card draw of Reprieve. But this Rest in Peace against Graveyard Shenanigans, it just seems like a better card. Let's see here. Okay, so there's Burn. Thalia is absolutely going to screw up Burn's game plan by their non-creature spells costing 1 more to cast, in addition to our life gain, is going to be very bad for Burn. So that's kind of the direction we go there. Now, let's say we're going against some artifacts and some reanimators. So for artifacts, we have 3 Void Mirrors because we want one quick and we want it in our hands to shut things down. So whenever a player casts a spell, if no colored mana was spent to cast it, counter it. Just like that, Tony. Oh, like that. So yeah. Drop a poo-poo on the fun bomb, man. Because we're the ones, we want to drop the fun bomb. We want to drop a poo-poo on their fun bomb, and that's what our Void Mirror is going to do here. So as always, I like to have 1, because we may not want to have all 3 of those in there. In fact, what if they're running things like the 1 ring, things like that? We can't destroy the 1 ring. We certainly can return it to hand or return it to a library. And when you put that non-land historic permanent into its owner's library, 4th from the top, that might as well be exiling it for all intents and purposes in modern gameplay. So Lost to Legend can find its way in against artifact decks, but mostly we'll go Revoke Existence. If they're doing some Reanimator hijinks, we got Tormod's Crypt. The Revoke Existence now, exile target artifact or enchantment. Right here. Here's our artifact destruction. Let's get that right out there. So this would be our artifact destruction buffet, as it were. Got the Revoke Existence to exile the artifacts or enchantments. We'll have the Lost to Legend to put target non-land historic permanents into its owner's library, 4th from the top, which is super awesome. And that double white doesn't bother us at all. Yeah, so that's pretty good artifact hate. Honestly, I really do think. One second. Let me see. Thought I had a Reprieve up here. Somewhere. I got a couple more reprieves. But I am really chewing over adding another reprieve in here just because I like that card draw. But it's very hard because I don't know what I'd take out. In reprieve being a 2-drop, eh. But in any case, that's how we deal with other decks that we might come across. Now, let's talk about how can we make this deck a non-budget and make it better. That's pretty easy. Chalice of the Void. 2, 3 Chalice of the Voids. Urza's Saga to get some of the artifacts as we add a few more. I'd say 2 Urza's Saga would be good. Of course, because it's a tribal, Cavern of Souls, 4. And then some kind of card draw. And honestly, like a free mana producer, of some kind, like to interact with our legendary creature. But I guess, well, maybe not. That might be a bad slot. Just because Thalia is the only legendary. No, oh wait, we got Kytheon. So we're running 6 legendaries, so I don't know if like the Mox Amber would be a good thing. But I think Cavern of Souls and Chalice of the Void, certainly. And then you could color splash it. Orzhov would be good. Of course, Selesnya, always good. Yeah, I think Orzhov and Selesnya color splash it, add some fetch lands. But honestly, I like it white like this. It really takes the problem away from things like Blood Moons, which I tend to come across quite a bit. Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's straightforward. Make a big board state, and it's the human fund, so humans putting counters on humans. Humans helping humans get counters. And sometimes we just fund the counters ourselves with our ramp anthem, rampham anthems with our anthem spells. Putting those counters out. And then life gain is going to be canceling out burn. We have ways to remove pet creatures that people may play. Yeah, this, honestly, like having played against this with all of my decks, this is the one where it kind of makes me groan to play against. Because I'm like, man, this game is going to grind. You know that's going to happen. And you know that it's going to be like keeping you on your toes all the time. And you definitely don't want to be spending life. Like if you're using a lot of fetch lands, like in my prowess deck, when you're using fetch land life, it hurts, and you know it, even 1 life. So I definitely, if I go against this deck, will run some Weather the Storm, some kind of life gain. And then it being mono white too, like it'll shut down like people running Dragon's Claw to gain life when a player casts a red spell, which would be any player. So Dragon's Claw is doing nothing for you in this deck. You know, in your deck, if you're playing against this one. Once you're casting a bunch of red spells, so mono red prowess, yeah. But you're going to be losing life faster than Dragon's Claw is going to be giving it to you. So against this, honestly, like something like Weather the Storm would be a good route to go. All right, there's the that's the old sideboard there. Cool. All right, and thank you for joining me. I would highly recommend building this deck if you want to get into Modern, because little variations of this are not bad. They're not badly priced. You can make variations. You can upgrade the deck as time goes on. And if you like playing creatures, it's definitely a good time for that. Yeehaw, man. Creature time, brothers, sisters, and siblings. So get out there, make this deck, give it a try, because creatures are making a comeback. So it's our time. Now that the Fury's gone, it's our time, right?